My best friend betrayed me. But now he's desperate. When friendship turns into deception. The soft glow of the laptop screen illuminated Jake Morrison's face as he scrolled through his social media feed for the 100th time that day. His hands trembled slightly as he watched yet another video of Oliver Reed, his childhood best friend, performing their song, on national television. The comments section was flooded with praise for Oliver's incredible songwriting talent and his deeply personal lyrics. Jake felt sick to his stomach. Those weren't Oliver's personal lyrics. They were Jake's diary entries, his innermost thoughts and feelings, transformed into melodies during countless late-night writing sessions in Oliver's garage. Sessions where they had sworn to always be equals, to build their dream together. He could still remember the day they met in middle school, both awkward 12-year-olds with second-hand guitars and dreams bigger than their small Connecticut town. Oliver had been the one to approach him during lunch break, spotting the guitar picks Jake used as a makeshift necklace. "You play?" he'd asked, eyes lighting up with genuine excitement. That simple question had sparked a friendship that would shape the next 15 years of their lives. Together, they had learned to play, to write, to perform. They started with terrible covers at school talent shows, graduated to open mic nights at local coffee shops, and eventually began booking regular gigs at bars across New England. Their sound was unique, a blend of folk and alternative rock that seemed to capture something raw and honest about growing up and finding your place in the world. Jake had always been the primary songwriter, pouring his soul into lyrics while Oliver worked his magic with arrangements and harmonies. They were a perfect team, each bringing their strengths to create something greater than themselves. Or so Jake had thought. The warning signs had been there, looking back. The way Oliver had started insisting on handling all their business dealings himself. "You're the artist, Jake," he'd say with that easy smile that could charm anyone. "Let me deal with the boring stuff." The private meetings he'd begun taking with industry contacts, always with some excuse about why Jake couldn't attend. The subtle way he'd started introducing their songs as "pieces I've been working on" during performances, rather than their usual "songs we wrote." But Jake had trusted him completely, had dismissed the quiet voice of doubt in his head as mere paranoia. After all, this was Oliver, the same guy who'd spent 3 days helping Jake move across state lines when he couldn't afford movers, the friend who'd held him through the night when Jake's mom passed away from cancer 2 years ago. That trust made the betrayal cut even deeper when Jake discovered the truth. It wasn't some dramatic revelation, just a casual email from a music blog requesting an interview with Oliver Reed about his upcoming album. Jake had seen it by accident while using Oliver's laptop to adjust their sound levels during a show. His world had collapsed in the space of a few seconds as he'd clicked through to find the record deal Oliver had signed 3 months ago. The contract listed Oliver as the sole songwriter and rights holder for their entire catalog of music. 15 years of friendship, hundreds of songs they'd crafted together, all legally claimed by the man Jake had considered his brother. The true genius of Oliver's betrayal was in its timing. He'd waited until they had a solid following, until their music had matured into something truly marketable. He'd built everything on Jake's talent while systematically positioning himself as the face of their success, knowing that in the music industry, possession and perception were everything. Now, as Jake watched another clip of Oliver performing on a late-night show, something shifted inside him. The crushing pain of betrayal began to crystallize into something harder, colder, more focused. If Oliver wanted to play games, Jake would show him what it meant to truly understand strategy. He opened a new document on his laptop and began to type, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he outlined his plan. Oliver had always said Jake was too trusting, too straightforward for the music industry. It was time to prove him wrong. The first step was documentation. Jake spent weeks meticulously gathering evidence, original lyric notebooks dating back to their teenage years, emails discussing song revisions, voice memos from writing sessions, and hundreds of text messages about their creative process. He even had videos from their songwriting sessions, casual footage they'd recorded for their future documentary, when they made it big. The irony wasn't lost on him. But Jake knew that in the digital age, revenge required more than just evidence. It required narrative. People didn't just want facts, they wanted stories. And he had a story that would captivate millions, a tale of betrayal that would resonate with anyone who'd ever been stabbed in the back by someone they trusted. He started small, creating an anonymous Instagram account that posted daily, inspirational, quotes about loyalty and betrayal. Each quote was actually a lyric from one of their songs, accompanied by dates that predated Oliver's supposed writing of them. The account gained a modest following, including several music industry insiders who were drawn to the mysterious content. Meanwhile, Jake reached out to Sarah Chen, a music journalist who had interviewed them years ago when they were still playing small venues. She had always seemed more interested in the storytelling aspect of songwriting than the industry politics, and Jake remembered how she'd specifically commented on the raw honesty in his lyrics. "I need your help," Jake told her over coffee at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, "but this isn't just about me. It's about every songwriter who's ever been ghosted by the industry, every artist who's had their work stolen by someone they trusted." Sarah listened intently as Jake laid out his evidence, her journalist's instinct clearly sensing a story that could shake the industry. But instead of rushing to publish, she helped him refine his strategy. "The timing has to be perfect," she explained. "Too soon, and Oliver's PR team will bury it. Too late, and people will question why you waited." They decided to wait until Oliver's album release week, when all eyes would be on him. But in the meantime, Jake had other plans to set in motion. He contacted Maria Rodriguez, the gifted sound engineer who had worked with them on their early demos. Maria had always known Jake was the primary songwriter, had watched him craft the lyrics while Oliver worked on production. "I need you to check something for me," Jake told her, sending over the stems from Oliver's new singles. Within hours, Maria had confirmed what Jake suspected: Oliver had used portions of their original demo recordings, digitally manipulated to mask their origin. It wasn't just theft of credit, it was theft of actual audio content. As the pieces of his plan fell into place, Jake maintained his public silence. He watched as Oliver's star continued to rise, as he charmed his way through interviews and performances. Each appearance only added to the evidence, as Oliver contradicted himself about the origins of songs, mixed up the dates of when pieces were written, and struggled to explain the deeper meanings behind lyrics he hadn't written. One particular interview made Jake's blood boil. Oliver was on a popular music podcast, telling the host about how he'd written their most personal song, "Mother's Goodbye," during a burst of inspiration after losing his own mother. Jake had written that song in the hospital during his mom's final days, playing it for her on his guitar while Oliver had been on vacation in Cancun, ignoring Jake's calls. But Jake forced himself to remain calm. Anger would make him sloppy, and he couldn't afford mistakes. Instead, he channeled his emotions into preparing the next phase of his plan. He began recording acoustic versions of their entire catalog, raw and stripped-down performances that highlighted the personal nature of the lyrics. Each recording was dated and notarized, building an undeniable timeline of creation. He also started attending industry events, not as Oliver's former partner, but as a solo artist looking to network. He was careful never to mention Oliver, never to show any bitterness. Instead, he built genuine connections, sharing new songs that were clearly cut from the same emotional cloth as Oliver's hits. People noticed. Questions began to circulate quietly through the industry about the strange similarity between this unknown songwriter's style and the supposed overnight sensation's work. Oliver, riding high on his success, remained oblivious to the web being woven around him. In fact, his ego had grown to such proportions that he'd begun to believe his own lies. In interviews, he now claimed to have taught Jake everything he knew about music, portraying himself as the mentor who had graciously given his friend a chance to play alongside him. Each new fabrication was another nail in his eventual coffin. The true turning point came 6 months into Oliver's meteoric rise. He had just been nominated for a Grammy for Best New Artist, and the industry was buzzing with anticipation of his sophomore album. The nomination had made him cockier than ever. He'd even stopped crediting their old band in interviews, instead crafting a new origin story about writing songs in his college dorm room. That's when Jake finally launched the first direct phase of his plan. Sarah Chen published her exposé, a masterfully crafted piece that didn't just accuse, it demonstrated. The article included QR codes linking to video clips of their original writing sessions, time-stamped emails discussing lyrics, and most devastatingly, early recordings of Jake performing rough versions of songs years before Oliver claimed to have written them. The piece went viral within hours. Oliver's PR team scrambled to contain the damage, issuing a statement claiming the article was a vindictive attack by a jealous former collaborator. But Jake had anticipated this response. Within minutes of Oliver's statement, the mysterious Instagram account that had been posting those lyric quotes revealed its full archive, hundreds of posts documenting the true history of each song, complete with dates and contextual evidence. Maria Rodriguez chose that moment to release her analysis of the audio stems, showing conclusively that Oliver had manipulated their original demo recordings. The evidence was technical enough to convince industry professionals while still being understandable to the public. Oliver hadn't just stolen credit, he'd literally stolen Jake's voice. The industry turned on Oliver with breathtaking speed. The same publications that had praised him as a genius now ran stories about the scandal. His Grammy nomination became controversial, with several committee members publicly calling for its withdrawal. The record label, sensing disaster, launched an internal investigation. Oliver tried to fight back, giving an emotional interview where he claimed Jake had agreed to let him take credit for the songs in exchange for a private financial arrangement. It was a desperate lie, and Jake had been prepared for it. He released a single text message from Oliver from 2 years ago: "Someday we'll tell our kids about how we wrote these songs together in my garage. Brotherhood forever." The dam broke. Other musicians and industry figures began coming forward with their own stories of Oliver's duplicity. A backup singer revealed he had tried to claim co-writing credit on her original songs in exchange for putting her in his band. A producer shared emails showing Oliver had attempted to pass off another artist's demo as his own work. Jake watched it all unfold from a distance, declining all interview requests, letting the evidence speak for itself. He had learned from Oliver's mistake: sometimes silence was more powerful than any statement. His only public action was to release a simple acoustic video of himself performing "Mother's Goodbye" in his mom's hospital room, dated 3 years earlier. The raw emotion in his voice, combined with the date stamp and his mother's visible presence in the background, destroyed any remaining doubt about the song's true author. The label dropped Oliver within weeks of the scandal breaking. They also reached out to Jake through back channels, offering to make things right. But Jake had one more card to play. He had discovered that Oliver, in his arrogance, had never actually registered the copyright for most of the songs. Jake had maintained his own copyrights all along, filing them quietly over the years out of what he'd once considered unnecessary caution. Now that same caution proved to be Oliver's undoing. Not only was he dropped from the label, but he faced significant legal liability for his use of copyrighted material. The sophisticated image he'd crafted crumbled as he was forced to admit, in legal depositions, that he had systematically stolen his former best friend's work. The industry blacklist was immediate and absolute. Oliver's upcoming shows were cancelled. His streaming numbers plummeted. The Grammy nomination was withdrawn. Former celebrity friends unfollowed him on social media. He was transformed overnight from rising star to industry cautionary tale. Through it all, Jake maintained his dignified silence. He focused on his own music, releasing new songs that captured the pain and complexity of betrayal without ever directly referencing Oliver. The authenticity that had always been present in his writing shone through even more clearly now, and listeners connected with it deeply. His first official single, "Paper Crown," debuted in the top 10, its lyrics about false kings and hollow victories striking a chord with audiences who had followed the scandal. It was 3 months after the peak of the scandal when Oliver finally came to Jake's apartment. Jake had known this moment would come, had prepared himself for it mentally, but seeing Oliver standing there, shoulders slumped and eyes haunted, still sent a jolt through his system. His former best friend had aged years and months, his designer clothes replaced by a simple hoodie, his carefully styled hair now unkempt. "Can we talk?" Oliver's voice was rough, missing the smooth charm that had once been his trademark. "Please." Jake studied him for a long moment before stepping aside to let him in. The apartment was small but warm, its walls lined with guitars and handwritten lyrics, a space that screamed authenticity in a way Oliver's sleek penthouse never had. "I've lost everything," Oliver said, sinking into a chair. "The label's suing me for breach of contract. My accounts are frozen. No one in the industry will touch me. My own family." He trailed off, running trembling hands through his hair. Jake remained standing, his face impassive. "Did you expect anything different?" "I know I messed up." "Messed up?" Jake's laugh was sharp. "You didn't mess up, Oliver. You made calculated decisions, over and over, for years. You looked me in the eye and called me brother while systematically stealing my life's work. I never meant." "Yes, you did." Jake's voice was quiet but firm. "That's what I finally understood. Every step was intentional. Every lie was planned. You saw an opportunity and you took it, knowing exactly what it would cost me." Oliver slumped further in his chair. "You're right," he whispered. I thought I could do it better, you know. Make the songs bigger, reach more people. I convinced myself I deserved it because I could sell it better. But the songs, they were always yours. The soul in them was always yours." Jake moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "You know what the worst part is? I would have given you anything if you'd just asked. If you'd come to me and said you wanted to be the face of our music, I probably would have agreed. That's what makes your betrayal so pointless." "I know that now," Oliver said, his voice breaking. "I know that now and I can't fix it. But Jake, please, you're the only one who might understand. We came up together. We shared the same dreams. I'm drowning here." Jake turned back to him, and for the first time, Oliver saw not anger in his former friend's eyes, but something closer to pity. "You're right. I do understand. That's why I know that helping you now would only be enabling the same patterns that got us here." "So that's it?" Oliver's voice cracked. 15 years of friendship means nothing." "It meant everything," Jake corrected him. "That's why your betrayal warranted such a complete response. You didn't just steal songs, Oliver. You stole years of trust, of shared dreams, of brotherhood. The consequences you're facing, they're the natural result of your choices." Oliver stood slowly, his movements those of a much older man. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted. "Everything I thought I'd become was built on lies," Jake finished. "Maybe it's time to find out who you really are." As Jake watched Oliver leave, he felt a complex mix of emotions wash over him. The revenge he'd plotted so carefully had worked exactly as planned, better than planned, even. He'd reclaimed his music, his reputation, and his future in the industry. But the hollow look in Oliver's eyes left him with a nagging emptiness he hadn't expected. In the months that followed, Jake's career flourished. His debut album, Trust Fall, earned critical acclaim and commercial success. Music journalists praised its unflinching exploration of betrayal, redemption, and the price of authenticity. Some songs were clearly about Oliver, but others delved deeper, examining Jake's own role in allowing the deception to continue for so long. Oliver, meanwhile, disappeared from public view. Occasionally, Jake would hear rumors: Oliver was teaching music to kids in Arizona, or working as a session musician in Nashville under a different name. Part of him wanted to reach out, to offer some kind of closure, but he knew that some bridges, once burned, needed to stay ash. Late one night, after a sold-out show at the venue where he and Oliver had played their first gig, Jake found himself sifting through old photos on his phone. He came across one from their high school days, two kids with cheap guitars and expensive dreams, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at a future they thought they'd share. The sight of it still hurt, but differently now. It was no longer the sharp pain of betrayal, but the duller ache of nostalgia for something irretrievably lost. He opened his songwriting notebook and began to write, his pen moving quickly across the page. Some bridges burn so bright they light the way forward. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but maybe it was something close to understanding. In the end, maybe that was the real victory, not the revenge itself, but the wisdom gained from walking through the fire. The next morning, Jake received an email from a young songwriter seeking advice about protecting their work in the industry. As he began to type his response, he realized that his story with Oliver, painful as it was, might serve a greater purpose. Perhaps some bridges needed to burn so that others could learn to build stronger ones. The last thing Jake wrote in his notebook that night wasn't a lyric, but a simple truth he'd learned the hard way: success built on lies is just failure in disguise. His revenge had been complete, but its greatest value wasn't in destroying Oliver's false success, it was in proving that authenticity, though a longer road, was the only path worth taking.